Thanks, Victoria. Hi, I'm Pat. Does that sound okay? Great. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. This is my first time in Iceland, and I'm a colleague of Bruce Hamilton. Bruce and I have worked together for many, many years, both in private industry and, for me, since 2000 with the Greater Boston Manufacturing Partnership. So not only is it my first time to Iceland, but you guys have already, I think I'm in love with Iceland because you've already given me many firsts. I have to say it's the first time I've ever swum in the Atlantic in March. Thank you to my students who I've taught a bronze class the last couple of days, and thanks to my students for that first. Probably the first time I ever ate that delicacy shark dish that you have here, and the first time I ate puffin. So thank you for many firsts, and change is all about mindset, I think we heard earlier, being willing to try some new things. So thank you so much. Good to be here. Now, Bruce sort of already teed you up about what GBMP is all about. I won't spend a lot of time there, except to say, shameless plug, on your table, I left you a sheet for our conference, which is in September in Springfield, Mass. Couple of days, very similar to this with great speakers. It's our 11th conference, and we would really love to see a nice contingent of Iceland people, because especially we know you're so much fun, and you know, who knows, you'd probably want to go swimming when you're there too. So please, and also tomorrow we are teaching a workshop Bruce and I are doing, which is kind of an overview workshop, which we're going to spend most of the day doing a simulation where you get to run the little factory that transforms from a traditional factory to a lean factory, and we'll have a lot of great discussion. So if you're interested in coming tomorrow, we have a few seats left. Just see me afterwards at one of the breaks, and we'll see if we can get you in. But we'd love to have you along. All right, so what I'd like to do today in my presentation, kind of like Bruce, I was on the impression that my goal was to give you some practical takeaways. So my topic about Gemba walks, what I want to try to do is help you, first of all, to have some frameworks, what to think about, and how to reinforce many of the points that Bruce made and Perka made in this room early this morning through your actual Gemba walks. And then I want to talk about it in terms of how it fits into the philosophical basis for lean, and talk about how, as leaders, you have an opportunity when you visit your Gembas, where people are doing work, to reinforce all of those things, everything from the vision to exciting the people about making change, encouraging them, celebrating what they've done, checking, understanding, coaching. All of those are opportunities for you when you go to the Gemba. And then I'm going to leave you, if you get sick of hearing me talk, good for you, because most of my presentation is actually going to be one of our crazy videos. And it's going to be about Gemba and the practicalities of how to behave as a leader in Gemba. Because like most things in this lean journey, this is 90% about people, and you can make or break this journey by just a few words sometimes in terms of how you handle yourself as a leader in the Gemba. So we'll share with you, and hopefully you'll get a few laughs out of it, and you'll see maybe based on our behavior some things you probably shouldn't do. Okay, so thanks to our friends from Toyota. This is a visual, and you can see it's a little bit old because we've kind of culled it out, but I think this is, to me, what I would like you to start with as your framework for thinking about what is it we're really trying to accomplish. And I'd like to just sort of make the connection to what this means if we're going to go to the Gemba. So if we really step back and think about this lean journey, right, for many of us, we'd like to start with this concept of true north, or that ideal place, or perfection, all the different terms we've heard for what that's called. But this quotation on the right, and I think this came from Mr. Oba, right, Bruce, who was a sensei to us from Toyota Supply Support Center many years ago. When he talked about this, he talked about, look, this isn't always what we should do. It's what we should do, not always what we can do. So as leaders, we have to be out there and willing to take those risks and move us forward and create that vision for the organization. And it may not always be comfortable. And probably one of the biggest messages that I hope you take from this presentation is that besides going to the Gemba, as managers, if we want to inspire change in others, we have to change the work that we do as well. So the takeaway I hope you have here is that Gemba Walk is one way that a manager can change the way they perform their work so that they can reinforce the right behaviors and become better teachers and coaches and mentors for everybody else. So as Bruce mentioned, the Toyota view of this is everyone, every minute, every day, which we kind of took as our tagline, everybody, every day. But a couple of key points here. When we think about this journey, it's cycles of improvement over and over as we try to approach true north. But we have a couple of constituencies here that we need to keep in mind. See, pretty much everybody's always thinking about this is all about customer satisfaction, right? Value by the customer and all those things. But it's actually two things. It's also employee satisfaction. So if you think about this, we're going to develop people, and part of this is winning their hearts and minds and helping them to understand why we need them to change in this journey. So if we can keep in mind that this journey to true north is always about balancing customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction, and the way that we do that is through developing those people skills and capabilities. And our ability to problem solve and have everybody be a problem solver is the means by which we're going to constantly run these experiments and close these gaps and move closer and closer to this ideal state. So we tend to sometimes refer to this, the model of how we do this as the lean triangle, or a better way maybe to look at this is maybe to call it the three-legged stool. Okay, so here's the premise, right? What happens when you take away one leg of the three-legged stool? Falls over, right? Okay, so this is what I want you to understand here. The philosophy of those basic tenets of lean are necessary as a foundation for everything else, and we can reinforce those when we go to the Gemba, all right? But they're not everything. We also need appropriate tools and techniques as a means to help us to move closer and closer to those philosophies and move the business to where we need to go to fulfill our strategies, if you will. But at the same time, we also need an appropriate management structure that creates that favorable environment for change to occur, for people to be developed. But that management environment has to be correctly reflecting the philosophical basis of the system, of the lean system. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And what the need is for management to change in order to do that. And also there's a need for managers to have some sense of true understanding of what the purpose of techniques are. You know, I just came from a place where I saw, I think, the worst in Gemba walks, meaning Gemba walk gone wrong. And this was my view, is they've just saw a tool and said, everybody who's going to get lean needs the Gemba walk. So we walked around with them, and essentially it was a bunch of managers, the whole top management team, walking around, going to the kiosk. By the way, they had all the visual boards, SQDC boards everywhere. They never talked to anybody in the area. Matter of fact, this was probably one of my biggest issues. They went into one area, and I literally saw the supervisor in the area kind of come over and go like this. So what does that mean in terms of understanding from the true purpose of why those managers should be out there? Oh, and by the time, when then they were done, so they took all this data down off these charts, which then goes into a computer system that the people on the floor never see. And then they go into a room and they figure out all the safety problems they've observed, and they figure out who's going to take care of them. Now, I hope by the end of the talk I give today and the video you watch, you'll understand why that's a Gemba walk gone wrong. Okay, so as Bruce mentioned, what we're talking about here, we do need the technical tools, and we want everyone to have an understanding at the level necessary for them to be able to use them comfortably. But particularly from management's point of view, there's this social aspect that they need really to spend a lot of time on to create that favorable environment. But unfortunately, traditionally, think about your own organizations. When do we often see managers walking around or leaders walking around? These are typically, you know, in the old days, sometimes we didn't see our owners, managers on the shop floor for years. Okay, so what does that say to people if they never see them? Okay, and also some people misunderstand and say, well, I walk through the department, isn't that what a Gemba walk is? But what I want you to understand is a Gemba walk should have a purpose, all right? And we will talk about some of the things to think about in your mind before you go out there, and also some of the ways that you will conduct yourself or need to conduct yourself when you do it. So let's frame it a little bit now, begin to. So these come also from Toyota Production System Support Center, the key 3+1 top management roles. So first is strong, visible TPS commitment. They need to show passion. So when you're on the shop floor, you have an opportunity to really show commitment to that. And how many ways can you do it? If somebody's struggling and to get something done, and you're out there and you hear this, that I'm trying to get this project done, but I can't get any resources from engineering or whatever else. You're a person that can help make those things happen. I'm not telling you to make promises you can't keep. In fact, I'm telling you, be careful, don't do that. But on the other hand, you can demonstrate what the most important things are, not by what you say, by what you do. Okay? And just by coming to the floor every day and say, looking at a SQDC board and safety, quality, cost, delivery, if you don't know what that is, and asking some questions, you're demonstrating that you're interested and you want to understand. And by the way, if you come out and you follow up on that, oh, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Rosa, I'm back a couple of weeks. Rosa, can you show me what's happened since I was here last time? Wow, I'm showing some passion, right? I'm visible, I'm out there, I'm talking about it. Okay, you need to understand Toyota Production System, lean, continuous improvement, whatever terms you want to use in your organization correctly. Both the principles and the details. Okay, and so I go to a lot of organizations and they, we'll be working on something, but somebody in a leadership role will say something like, well, that one piece flow is not for us. And I just want to shoot myself. Okay, it's not that I'm worried whether they ever get there. I'm worried about the misunderstanding of why we want to get there, and I'm not recognizing that this is a fundamental principle of understanding that an ideal is being able to provide what the customer wants, when they want it, and the quantity they want it. So if I don't philosophically understand where I'm trying to get to, and I make statements, and those statements are heard by a lot of other people, right? How am I ever going to get other people to really understand what do we mean by that principle, and what does it mean about my day-to-day job? If you're asking me to change over that machine more frequently, I don't really want to do that. Because my first inclination is it's just going to be more work for me. Instead of thinking, gee, the customer wants smaller batches more frequently. I need to do that, okay? All right, so I need to be a student of lean. Everybody, the more I learn, the more ignorant I know I am of lean. Okay, since what, Bruce, 1995 or thereabouts, we've been kind of seriously at this, and sometimes I shake my head at the stupid things I've done, but so you constantly have to be, and when I hear people say, I'm an expert at, I don't know, value stream mapping, something else, I want to kill them too, because I'm saying, have you done this in a service industry? Have you done this in an emergency department in a hospital, et cetera? How do you know that you know how everything needs to work in every value stream map? So. And also, when you walk the floor, you have to have enough details. For example, one of the big things I see when I visit companies, they say, oh, we have a Kanban system. So I just shake my head, yes, and I say, okay, well, let's see that. So I'll give you an example. Go out there, and they say, all right, here's our Kanban system. And I say, okay, so what do you do when this box is empty? So this was an answer I really got. Well, I take that box and I go over to my computer system and I check to see if the ERP system says I need to build any. So, fundamentally, right, they don't really understand and they're not running it as a true pull system. So, but if I'm a leader and I don't understand that and I go to the shop floor, I can be bamboozled pretty easily. It's like, oh, look at this, it looks nice. We got tape around the floor, etc. But they really need to understand fundamentally what's the purpose of that tool. Is it being used appropriately, and is it driving the longer-term behavior ultimately that would cause them to reduce and eliminate the Kanban? Because truthfully, in the end, we don't want Kanban. It's a stopgap measure. Okay, make problem visible. So I think it's Perno that said earlier, I want everything to be visual. She has her projects and everything up there. But what's the purpose of this from the point of view of going to the floor and engaging our employees, right? So basic concept, make abnormalities stand out immediately so that we can do something about them. So we need everything to be visual, right? So that we can see those problems, and I think you said it earlier, gold nuggets, right? We want them to stand out. So we want to create the conditions so that when people walk the shop floor, it's easy for operators to communicate that there's a problem. It's easy for leaders to see that there's a problem so they can engage in that dialogue. And finally, that's what this whole thing is about, this go and see mentality. That's one of the fundamental 4 philosophies of continuous improvement. Direct observation, go to where the work is done. This is how we really grasp the situation. And I'll tell you that many years early in my career, I fell into that trap of sitting in the meeting and somebody who's supposed to be knowledgeable told me what was happening, and oh yes, that's really too bad. Well, finally, somebody brighter than me said, why don't we go have a look? And guess what? Every time we went and looked, there was much more to know, and it was never as simple and straightforward, and sometimes it was totally different what was really happening, all right? So I have to be that active participant to see what's happening. Now, if we align those 4 with Chairman Cho of Toyota's 3 keys to lean leadership: go see, ask why, and show respect, right? I need senior management to spend most of their time in the front lines. I need them to be asking questions, challenging people. That's a respectful thing, to challenge people. But how I do it, I have to be careful in those Gemba walks, okay? It's all about this, because I can accelerate or I can inhibit this process depending on those behaviors. Okay, so the idea here is if I focus on enabling the worker during those, the things that Bruce talked about earlier, the little things that get in the way of their work, this helps to create that spirit of, this is about you, all right? And you can also talk to them about why we need to do it, but they're the ones that are going to give us those gold nuggets about what can be different. So we want to build from the worker out, continually removing the waste from their work so that nothing is left. And Bruce mentioned this earlier, easier, better, faster, cheaper. That's the respect for the worker and the people that are out there and what they go through every day. All right, and as we walk the floor, we need to have the 3 M's in mind. You know, I'm not going to go through them all, but you need to train yourself during your Gemba walk to be able to identify, where is this happening? And then to begin to ask the questions, why, and engaging the team to help you to understand that. And then soliciting from them their ideas about how can we change that, okay? But if you don't understand this, or you accept the status quo, oh, we always have an end-of-month crunch. Shame on you as a leader. I mean, we may have to tolerate that for a while, but one of your jobs is to ask why. Because you're generally the people that run the systems, the cross-functional activities, where you can step back and start to ask your colleagues, your peers in sales and marketing, why is it that the customer only buys once a month or takes delivery once a month? What can we do differently on that? Okay, and also, as leaders, we have to have in mind that when we walk the shop floor, we need to be looking for the obstacles, the kinds that only we can impact. So logistical, how many of your frontline employees are so empowered these days that they can say, cut down that wall because I need to talk to that next department? Okay, these kind of barriers generally require leaders and managers to take care of them. Similarly, you know, the ideas of processes that have historically have been there, or documentation or the like. Oh, well, in order to buy a $25 wrench, I have to have 54 signatures. Okay, that's a management policy. These are things that you need to be on the lookout for. And you need to ask why. Why do we do that? Right? And you can't see those until you actually are out there and engaging and talking with the people. And likewise, you need to be looking at policies and asking yourselves, is this policy moving me closer to ideal, or is it actually inhibiting this? Same thing with your measurements. I think we had some examples earlier about how measurements can actually hold us back. And also, when you're visiting, you would like to have frame in your mind the idea of the value stream. So I think everybody understands that the value stream is made up of both material and information flows. So when you're visiting, you have to sort of have that in mind, that step back look of overall, how are the pieces fitting together here so that I have synced up, you know, appropriate material with appropriate capacity, with appropriate methods and equipment, all working right. Okay, so we're really looking to get to this, right? So that every day is predictable based on what the customer needs. So your job when you visit is to try to understand, do we look more like this or look more like this, and understand what's causing this gap. Bruce talked about this, I showed this picture earlier. I won't spend a lot of time on it. I just want to say that it's important for you as a leader when you go to the Gemba to understand where you are on this visual. Because the things that you want to focus on or the kinds of dialogues you will engage in with people are going to be vastly different if I'm back in the stage of chaos. And what I can do to challenge people and the kinds of discussions or the kinds of coaching I'm going to do, it's going to be vastly different than if I'm up here, right? And we already have a strong base of standardization, and maybe they've got pretty good experience with making an improvement, are willing to solve bigger problems and take bigger risks. So think about that. Where am I when I'm visiting? And it might be different in different departments. All right, so I wanted to frame that all up for you just in terms of thinking about, as leaders, the kinds of things you need to be thinking about when you go out there. Now I want to turn it into the practical, which is, how should you really behave when you're out there? So have a few laughs. We're really not as bad as we appear in this video.
Direct observation, seeing for yourself, isn't only a keystone of TPS, or lean as we've come to call it, it's the underpinning of all of science. No secondhand information will substitute for being there, intently watching and listening, trying to understand on the spot what's actually happening. You know, before Galileo actually conducted his famous experiment to demonstrate the force of gravity, the prevailing worldview was that if a large and small ball were dropped together, the large ball would fall faster. This incorrect image of reality had been in place for over 1,000 years before Galileo challenged it. For promoting this revolutionary concept of direct observation, Galileo is often referred to today as the father of science. But in his own time, he was ostracized for being a heretic because he challenged status quo thinking. So what's this have to do with going to sea in the workplace today? And in particular, what's management's role when we go to sea? Several key points come to mind. First, understand the physics of the situation. We need to actually observe for ourselves. Second, the observation should relate to a hypothesis. Galileo actually disproved the hypothesis that the heavy ball would fall faster, creating a new version of what we call common sense today. Today, every grade schooler can tell you about that experiment. So there's a technical side of Go-See that requires both critical thinking and an open mind. But there's also an essential social side to direct observation, which is management's most important contribution to improvement. Galileo's brilliance was squashed in his lifetime because, in effect, he had no management support. They didn't go see, didn't have an open mind, and above all, were not scientists. As a result, it took another few hundred years for Galileo's thinking to be accepted. Without management validation and support, brilliant ideas languish, and improvement stalls. Those of you who have seen Toast Kaizen, a short video to demonstrate the power of small changes for the better, may also recollect that direct observation was needed to understand the toasting process before we could even talk about improvement. What you don't know is that the original version of this video was made many years earlier to show a management team how important it was for them to observe directly in order to provide the management support that Galileo unfortunately lacked. So, as a starting point, remember, you have two roles when you go to the floor. First, you're a scientist, present, with a critical but open mind. You go to the Gemba to learn. Second, you are there to help in whatever capacity you are able. And if you're a top manager, you can help in a way to energize and accelerate your lean transformation efforts that no one else in your organization can provide. Removing roadblocks, providing resources, and generally creating an environment that challenges employees but also gives them safety to be Galileos without reprisal. So let's talk a bit more about management's Go-See responsibility. We'll cover your social responsibility first, including a kind of Ann Landers list of do's and don'ts. For starters, if you haven't been in the practice of visiting the workplace, be careful not to scare people. Particularly as you begin to visit the floor, get your first-line supervisors involved up front so that they can explain to their employees that management is visiting the floor to help and remove struggles that employees have with their jobs. There'll still be concerns on the floor in your first visit, but at least a little less than if you just show up unannounced. This also engages your first-line supervisors up front, lessening their concerns as well. In fact, a little preparation on your part will give you some background on problems and opportunities in a particular area that will make you more comfortable when you go see. Having time to reflect on these in advance of meeting with associates will make you a more informed listener. Informed, yes, but only for listening and observing, not this.
Hey Rebecca, how you doing? Hey, Bob told me last night you had a problem with the Frizzle Frazzle machine, so I just wanted to let you know I ordered a brand new Gazornaplatz 2013. It'll be here Monday.
Keep this figurative image in mind. You need to listen and observe. Ask questions, yes, to understand. But don't also answer them yourself, even if you think you know the answer. Please remember that in a traditional environment, employees wait to be told what they think. As a top manager, your job is to change that paradigm. You're not just going to the floor as a scientist, you're also the chief executive change agent. Once you change, it will be easier for your managers and supervisors to change also. As a starting point, don't intimidate your employees by bringing a large posse of managers to go see. This just complicates communication. Here's an example of a better go-see condition in which everybody is engaged properly.
That's great, Eric. That's great. Bob, you need to come over here and hear Eric's idea. It's really awesome.
Sure. Can you guys tell me about it? Absolutely. So actually, it's a new software system that the college has implemented for students.
Yes, you may also see the benefit from having other managers along with the top managers so that they can learn as well. But don't make the group so large that participation is difficult. And for the top manager, don't miss the opportunity to support your first-line supervision while you're on the floor. This alliance is really important. I'd promised you an Ann Landers type etiquette list, but before I do that, here's a direct observation exercise for you to watch. Watch this short scenario and list as many etiquette blunders as you can see.
We brought you here today because we're having an issue maintaining certain standards. I feel like employees are not really grasping onto it, following the standards. The concern is we're due for a DPH evaluation. We need your input as managers because it's really important. This can't happen. This is if the DPH walked in, we're in big trouble. They're ignoring it.
Could you repeat that?
I'm trying very hard to get this accomplished, but we really need your input on this.
Stop the DVD. How many behavior problems do you see? Discuss, then restart.
You know, there are just so many ways to insult and disrespect people. And the more elevated your position in the organization, the bigger the insult. Here's a list of don'ts provided in rapid fire, like the school closings on a snow day. We've listed them separately on a crib sheet that's on the DVD for download and later review. Perhaps you've identified other don'ts. Bottom line, if you don't handle the social part of going to see, then you'll never get to the science part. Respect for people is one of the most basic principles of the Toyota production system. If you can't show respect, then expect nothing in return. Managers are often oblivious to the impact that their individual behaviors have. All of these don'ts can render your visits to Gemba worse than ineffective if you don't avoid them. So, okay, that's the law. Now here's the gospel, the good news. If you offer appropriate support and behaviors, these will be understood by employees as well. And the more senior your role, the more impactful these behaviors will be to everyone involved. If you are the top manager, you take the lead and others will follow. You won't see an overnight turnaround, but very soon your sincerity and passion will catch on. Here's an example of what I mean.
We have to put up signs that say it doesn't work, you know, and then we've got to call in people, and it takes them 24 to 40 hours to get here. Production slows down, we have to send jobs out.
Wow.
So
That's going to be really frustrating.
So are there some things that we can do that we haven't done that would help you to solve this problem, or have you had somebody in to look at the machine? Okay, do you see the difference? It's critical to connect with your team members in a way that will enable the science part of the Gemba Walk to be productive. Here's another rapid-fire list of do's. Again, available on your DVD crib sheet for your review. In many ways, the social part of the Gemba Walk is harder than the Go See Science because it requires a change in management behavior. We like to say that lean transformation is 90% people and 10% technical. But understanding the 10% is essential, and it is really science. Galileo's science was based upon the principle of gravity. His Gemba was the Tower of Pisa. Before we proceed describing the Go See Science here, remember that the Gemba is the real place where the actual work is done. It's not a conference room or war room or graphics on the wall near the area where the work is done. Don't waste your time with second-hand reports. Be a Galileo. Keep an open mind, but be a critical observer. Your observation is based upon some basic principles too, which together constitute an image of the ideal condition commonly referred to as true north. If your organization is aiming for lean transformation, then these are the principles that will guide your journey. We created a separate DVD to describe each of these principles in greater detail, but for now, consider this image. There are two groups of people here whose satisfaction is critical to moving ahead on your lean journey: customers and employees. The ideal true north condition for customers is providing the exact good or service with perfect quality and no waste. Remember, it's the ideal, a principle-based framework for your observation. It's a point on the horizon where your organization should be heading. The current condition in your business may be far off this ideal. From an employee standpoint, True North represents an environment that favors improvement and employee development. One free from danger, stress, and irrationality. An environment that challenges and develops your employees. When you go see, this is your framework for observation. This is the image of the ideal condition. It's your point of reference. Your organization will be somewhere on this stepwise journey. In fact, different areas of your organization may be in different places. Notice a couple of things here. First, that the journey from chaos to a high level of just-in-time occurs in many small steps, noted by the red staircase. You don't just jump between floors. When you go to the Gemba, you want to be sensitive to the current conditions so that you can help employees with the struggles that they face immediately, the struggles that are in front of them. For example, the current condition may be chaotic at first, with many issues of stability. Safety or ergonomic problems may be apparent, or machines could be down, or stopping frequently, or they could be leaking oil, or you might see large piles of inventory. Listen intently to the team members from the area to understand how you can help with these struggles. How can you make their job easier? The adage, "fix problems instantly," should be your mantra. When you take action on these problems, you're respecting your employees and showing a sincere management commitment to continuous improvement. If, on the other hand, you observe problems and let them fester, well, it would be better if you hadn't gone to the Gemba at all in that case. The Gemba you visit may already have tackled some of its stability problems and be progressing to a level of stability and then to standardized work, which represents a huge leap in lean understanding. As a manager, you need to understand the basics of standardized work in order to help. For example, is the area you visit basing its workflow on takt time, the rate at which the customer requires the good or service? Is there a clear visual, repeatable sequence of operations that's followed to complete this work? Can you tell at a glance if a team member is ahead or behind, or if they're having a problem following the standard? Can you tell if they have just the right amount of material and information to do their work, or too much, or not enough? This ability to visualize work takes your Gemba walk to a whole new level. Team member struggles will become more obvious. Is there excess motion, or waiting, or strain? What are the problems that cause the team to fall below the standard? Scrap? Rework? Part defects? What is the team's target for the next improvement? What resources can you provide, or what roadblocks can you remove to enable them to move ahead in that direction? Standardized work is a major shift in behavior, from build as fast as you can to build at the rate the customer needs. Team members and supervisors usually struggle with this shift. Your job is to grasp what those struggles are and provide resources and moral support to lessen the struggles. Approaching the ideal condition of true north means producing the customer's exact order immediately, moving from large batches to smaller ones, and then to one by one in the exact sequence that the customer needs. That's a big deal. Countermeasures like setup reduction, pull systems, and continuous flow are the means to closing the gap between batch and one by one. If the Gemba you are visiting has reached this level of practice, they too will have struggles. Setup reduction, for example, takes practice and experiments. You can't sharpen the blade when the saw is turning. Or creating a supermarket for a pull system may require upfront loading beyond the daily schedule. As a manager, you may not be the expert with the science behind these techniques, but you need a basic knowledge of the how-to and a manager's understanding of why these improvements are important. Or your employees' struggles may relate to quality problems, part defects, rework, or scrap. Listen to the problems your employees report to you. They hate quality problems and will never be able to produce to the customer's exact need as long as these problems exist. What countermeasures do they have in place? Basic problem solving, mistake proofing, or automation? Once again, as a manager, you may not be an expert at the know-how, but you should know why they are critical. And these tools should be available to your team members. The journey never ends, of course. There's always room for improvement. Easier, better, faster, and then cheaper, as Shigeo Shingo said, is the order for improvement. When you go to the Gemba, your role is to empower employees to achieve those ends and then to provide resources that they can't muster themselves, or remove roadblocks in your system that hold them back. Does your system make these problems ugly? Does the environment favor reporting problems? Are there policies or organizational issues that inadvertently stymie improvement efforts? Take notes. These problems are your homework. So, there's a plan, do, check, act cycle for your Gemba walk that will strengthen and accelerate the rate of improvement in your organization. First, do some planning for the area you're going to visit. Speak to the supervisor, gain an understanding of the current condition of the area and the improvement project that is ongoing. What is the target for improvement? What is the gap? Provide advance notice to team members about your visit and explain your purpose to allay their concerns. And select and inform those who will visit with you, including a review of the basic rules of etiquette and observation. Armed with this preparation, then go see. Observe, listen, try to grasp the situation. What is the function of this area? What gets in the way of that function? Where are the struggles? How can I help? Reflect with team members on what you've seen to be sure that you understand how you can help. If there are problems that can be fixed on the spot, fix them. For others, provide an honest, intermediate, and long-term follow-through. You may not be able to take action immediately on every need, but you need to sincerely try. And then, of course, you need to follow through. Thank team members for their time and their contribution to improvement. Let them see your concern and interest. Let them know what you have learned and what your next steps will be. You know, you don't go to Gemba to tell anyone how to do their job. You go to ask and understand what they need to do their job. You go to remove their struggles and to foster a strong relationship between management and supervision. And you go to learn and deepen your understanding so that you can be a better manager. Your Gemba walk may be only 30 minutes, but if you follow these guidelines, it will enable your team members to create a breakthrough improvement and keep your organization headed in a true north direction.
So I hope there were a few practical takeaways for you from that. We're just about out of time. And I just wanted to leave you with a few things to think about as takeaways. So when you're out there, you really want to think about what can I do to increase the momentum of improvement in the organization, and at the same time looking for the things that are getting in the way, the things that are slowing you down. And then think about, as I'm on my walk, what impact can I have? And these are a list of some things that you can think about in terms of how to accelerate, and on the other hand, things you need to be careful of. So I thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and if anybody's interested in talking about tomorrow's workshop, come and see me.
Thank you.